Red meat remains one of the more controversial foods. If you believe what many scientists and nutritionists say, red meat should be minimized or consumed at all. Supposedly there's a lot of bad things about red meat. So in this video today, I want to talk about whether you should consider eating red meat or not. Now, I should also point out that, speaking for myself, when I was a competitive bodybuilder, I always ate red meat. Red meat was considered a staple of bodybuilding diets. In fact, I could say that the diet that I used in my bodybuilding competition days to lower my body fat to minimal levels, to the lowest levels I can possibly get. Of course, I didn't use any drugs, so I depended on diet and nutrition to lower my body fat levels. But the diet that I used that worked successfully for me was a diet that consisted entirely of meat and eggs. That's red meat and whole eggs. I've tried, prior to that, I had tried just about every diet known to man, including low-fat diets, low-fat, high-carb diets. I was never one to favor eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, so I never tried a vegan diet or vegan diet. But I was turned on to the meat and egg diet by a famous trainer of the 60s and 70s called Vince Gironda. I didn't get the diet directly from Vince, although he helped me with it later on. I got it initially from a training partner where I was still living in New York as a teenager. He went out to California, trained under Vince Gironda's guidance. He brought back the diet. I used it, and I just couldn't believe how well it works. How well it worked. I never had any problems with it whatsoever. What I did, though, I didn't know as much about nutrition as I do today. But what I did is when I bought the red meat that I used with the meat and egg diet, I had a butcher cut out all the excess fat, and I would only consume lean cuts of meat, such as sirloin and round. This was basically hamburger. There was ground meat. I very rarely ate steaks. Most of it was ground meat because it was easier to cook, easier to obtain. And I would eat that. I'd have, let's say, maybe a half a pound to a pound of this hamburger or lean red meat. And I'd have it with anywhere from 4 to 6 eggs at a time. And that was a meal. That's all I ate. I had no other vegetables, nothing. I would do this for, depending on how much body fat I wanted to lose, I would do this for an average of 3 to 4 months prior to or before a contest appearance. And I started to see results after about 5 weeks in the sense that I started to get much more muscularly defined. By the 3-month mark, I was pretty muscular. I had reduced just about all my superficial body fat, and my abdominals were in bold relief, and so on and so forth. But I don't want to talk about me, but I just wanted to mention that I used to eat a lot of red meat. That's the reason I told you that anecdote. Red meat has resurfaced as a popular food in kind of specialty diets. One of them's called the carnivore diet, which I went over in past videos. I discussed that in past videos. Carnivore diet basically involves consuming only animal proteins, such as meat, fish, eggs, very little or no fruits and vegetables. So there's a lot of red meat consumed on that diet. It's probably the main food that's consumed on carnivore diets. If you believe some of the videos that are on YouTube and some of the articles written about it, people stay on this carnivore diet for extended times, and they claim that not only does it help them reduce body fat, but it seems to have tremendous health effects. A lot of these people who experience inflammatory diseases such as joint pains and other problems, they claim that being on the carnivore diet for several months alleviates most of their pre-existing medical problems. As far as I know, there's no actual medical evidence. Nobody has looked in depth at the carnivore diet or the exclusive animal protein diet to show or prove that it can alleviate these various ills. Could be, it could actually I'm suggesting, my theory is these people probably feel better because they're eliminating processed foods, they're eliminating refined carbohydrates, which are terrible, and they're probably getting a good amount of protein, and they're lowering their body fat levels. That last part is especially important in relation to all meat diets, as a carnivore diet. Did I say carnivore? That must have been a Freudian slip. I meant carnivore diet. When you lose body fat or fat cells secrete over 100 different proteins, collectively known as adipokines. Almost all of these adipokines, with the exception of a couple of them, such as adipokine, I can't remember the name of it, but most of them are highly inflammatory. This is the problem with body fat. It creates something called cystic inflammation. That's the cornerstone of most diseases. It's involved with chronic pain. So if you lower your body fat, your pain threshold or your pain level is going to go down considerably, and that could account for a lot of the feelings that people get when they eat these carnivore diets, which are based largely on red meat animal proteins. So there's that. Now, what about, should you consider eating red meat? Are there any particular reasons why you shouldn't eat red meat? Well, first, let me say that a lot of the decision whether to consume red meat, and also you have to define meat into two categories, which is natural unprocessed red meat, like what I used to eat, like, the sirloin or ground round, that kind of stuff. And there's the processed meat, such as found in hot dogs, delicatessen meats. There's a huge difference between both of them, simply because natural red meat is clean. It doesn't have any additives. It doesn't have anything in it that could possibly cause cancer, which isn't the case for processed meat. Most of the past studies that showed a relationship between eating meat and causing cancer, 9 out of 10 times involved processed meat rather than eating fresh red meat. There's very little evidence that fresh red meat stimulates cancer in any way. But the other reason why some people might want to avoid red meat is for ethical reasons. It's an animal. They don't want to eat animal foods, animal-based foods. These are the vegetarians, the vegans. They do it because they love animals. They don't like the idea of eating animals, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you choose not to eat red meat because you have sympathy or love for animals and don't want to eat them, I think that's noble, actually. I think that's very good. I myself, even as a bodybuilder, I always felt a little guilty about eating red meat and animal foods, knowing that they came from living beings. I ate the red meat because I thought I needed to. However, as time went on, I ate less, especially after my bodybuilding competition days were over. I cut down the red meat to very little. I was eating red meat maybe once or twice a week. Then a couple of years ago, I developed a condition called diverticulitis. I'm not going to go into the cause of that, but what it involves is kind of an inflammation of the intestine. I had to be hospitalized. I had a pretty serious case. I lost 28 pounds in 9 days. I couldn't eat any food. I had nothing to do in the hospital except lie in bed with an IV in my arm. So I did a lot of research on diverticulitis, including the causes and risk factors. And I found that one of the lesser risk factors for diverticulitis onset was eating red meat, any kind of red meat. Now, since I was planning to kind of cut out red meat anyway, that was my impetus to finally cut red meat completely out of my diet, which is what I did. This was a couple of years ago. So I haven't eaten red meat in several years. And the reason why is because it's a minor risk factor for diverticulitis. I don't want to get that again. It was horrible. The pain was extensive. I don't want to go through that again. But one of the other reasons is I also I don't like eating animals because of the ethical reasons. So if you don't want to eat red meat because of ethical reasons related to animals, that's a perfectly reasonable reason not to eat red meat. So I'll talk about some of the possible health concerns eating red meat in a minute or so. But first, I want to talk about why you might want to consider eating red meat. For one thing, red meat is a good source of various vitamins and minerals. It's an excellent source of protein, including the essential amino acids needed to promote muscle protein synthesis and muscle growth. Meat rates like third or fourth on the list of the best proteins. It's not quite as biologically available as dairy proteins such as milk and eggs, but it's right behind there. So it's an excellent source of protein. Meat contains a form of iron, which is called heme iron. Heme iron is a lot better absorbed than the non-heme iron found in fruits and vegetables. Now, fruits and vegetables do contain iron, but they contain a form called non-heme iron, which is far harder for the body to absorb than heme iron. Now, vegans can get around this by eating, let's say, some fruit or taking vitamin C with when they eat these vegetable foods that contain iron, because vitamin C will convert the non-heme iron into heme iron. So it's not a major problem for vegans, but it's good to know that red meat is rich in this very absorbable form of iron. Now, iron, I don't want to get off on tangents, but iron itself it has good and bad points. I'm going to be writing about this in my Applied Metabolics publication in detail. Suffice to say that iron can easily become oxidized in the body, and when it becomes oxidized, it can cause severe damage. It can cause the destruction of brain neurons, and it can stimulate cardiovascular disease. On the plus side, of course, iron is needed for the production of hemoglobin, which carries oxygen in the blood, in red blood cells. So it's important to have iron to prevent anemia. In fact, I've noticed that a lot of women, I've noticed over the years, they're not big on eating red meat. Most women, in my experience, seem to prefer things like salads and vegetables. They don't like the heavy foods like red meat. I don't know whether it's because of a concern about the calorie content of red meat, or they just don't have the appetite for red meat. That I don't know. I've never asked any woman that question. However, I suspect that one of the reasons why a certain type of anemia is far more prevalent in women than men, it results from two factors. First, women don't like to eat the animal protein foods that, like red meat, that contain heme iron, which is easily absorbed iron. And the second reason is the menstrual function of women, where they lose blood each month. And if they don't if they don't get enough iron in their diet, they can easily slip into anemia, which will make them feel very tired and cause a number of symptoms. But that's an interesting fact there also. Some recent studies show an interesting effect of iron. It turns out that iron actually will help protect DNA. DNA is the oxyribonucleic acid. It's the blueprint of cells. DNA is involved in cell replication. Cell replication. I got marbles in my mouth. So it's very healthy for a loss of DNA integrity is one of the main causes of aging. Increased repair of DNA explains why people live to advanced ages like 90 to 100 and over. So that's an interesting aspect of iron metabolism. They found that it seems to have a protective effect on DNA. So while I'm on the topic of iron, a lot of men wonder, should they be taking iron or as a supplement? My answer to that is no, especially if you eat red meat and good animal protein sources of iron, because you'll be getting plenty of iron. You only absorb 10% of your iron in food anyway, even at best. But if you eat red meat and other animal protein foods like liver, you don't have to worry about iron, and it's not a good idea for men to absorb to take a supplemental form of iron, because they don't lose iron like women do. In other words, men tend to recirculate their iron. There's no need to take an iron supplement. But I got off on a tangent there. I was talking about the nutrients and meat. Another feature of meat, the reason why I lived on red meat and eggs when I was trying to lower my body fat. And I still believe, by the way, that diet, which is also known as a ketogenic diet, I think it's the best way for somebody to reach ultra low levels of body fat. When I'm talking ultra low levels, I'm talking 5% body fat or less. It's the most efficient way for anybody, regardless of genetics, regardless of metabolism, to reach low body fat levels. Now, the reason why meat was included in that diet is meat contains 0 carbohydrates, not a single gram of carbohydrates. That's very important for somebody that has problems with blood glucose, people with insulin insensitivity, which is also known as prediabetes, because it's a forerunner to type 2 diabetes. As a matter of fact, recent studies show that if you put people on low carbohydrate diets, it decreases all symptoms of diabetes, including people who have to use insulin. And 51% of the people that go on low carb diets completely get rid of their diabetes. I'm talking about type 2 diabetes. Type 1 is something else. That's caused by damage to the pancreas, where the cells that produce insulin, the beta cells of the pancreas, they're attacked. It's an autoimmune disease. They have to take insulin the rest of their lives. It's a whole different situation. Vitamin B, red meat is a good source of vitamin B12. Only 1 ounce of beef will give you 29% of the daily requirement for B12. Vitamin B12, known as cobalamin, is only found in animal protein foods. Vegans, vegetarians are at a very high risk of a B12 deficiency because it's not found in, contrary to what you might hear in these idiotic vegan videos that some of these guys post, where they try and say you can get all the B12 you need from vegetable. Bull, that's bull. It's not true. The type of cobalamin found in vegetables is not absorbable by the human body. Only the animal form of B12 can be absorbed. And as I said, red meat is a good source. Red meat is a very good source of another important mineral called zinc. 1 ounce will give you 15% of the requirement of zinc. That's only 1 ounce of meat. Zinc activates over 300 enzymes. It's involved in growth hormone release. It's involved in testosterone metabolism. You can say it's a muscle-building mineral. Now, as far as meat is not a good source of the fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin D, A, E, and K. You'd have to get that from other sources. Vitamin D is easily available in a supplement form. Vitamin E, you'd have to take in a supplement to get sufficient amounts. Some people say that you don't need vitamin E at all, which is horrible, horrible advice. But I'm not going to go into the detail about that. Vitamin K you can get in vegetables. However, the type of vitamin K found in vegetables called vitamin K1, it's needed for blood coagulation, but it doesn't provide a lot of the other health benefits of vitamin K, such as cardiovascular protection. That you'd have to take vitamin K4 to K7, and those are available in stuff like miso, which is a soy product, and a couple of other specialty foods. Or you could do what I do, which is take a vitamin K4 I take a vitamin K supplement that contains all forms of vitamin K, K1, K4, and K7. So now, as far as what type of beef to eat, if you can handle it, I did an article on this a couple of years ago. Grass-fed beef. Grass-fed beef. Most conventionally raised beef they're raised on a diet of grain and corn, but the natural food for cows is grass. And when the cows eat exclusively grass, they produce a different type of meat, which is much higher in nutrients, has much better form of fat, and is actually healthy. There's absolutely nothing negative about grass-fed beef. One difference between grass-fed beef and regular beef is that the corn-fed beef, the corn feed that is normally fed to cows, it's rich in omega-6 fatty acids, and people already consume too many omega-6 in relation to omega-3. Now, grass-fed beef contains higher amounts of omega-3. However, the type of omega-3 found in grass-fed beef is called alpha-linoleic acid. It has to be converted in the body into the more active omega-3, which is EPA and DHA, and the body doesn't have a great ability to do so. So you would still need to depend on fatty fish like mackerel, salmon, halibut to obtain the bioavailable or the really good forms, efficient forms of omega-3. Now, one of the main criticisms of red meat that's always existed is its saturated fat content and cholesterol and all that stuff. For years, scientists believed that saturated fat had a direct relationship with causing cardiovascular disease, and other scientists tried to say that eating food cholesterol contributes to the cholesterol in your body. The truth is your body can't absorb more than 10% of cholesterol in food. That's a bunch of crap. Second thing is that saturated fat, the more recent studies show there's very little relationship between the intake of saturated fat and cardiovascular disease. Very little. The prior relationship was that saturated fat stimulated the production of low-density lipoprotein in the liver, and elevated levels of low-density lipoprotein are associated with cardiovascular disease. However, only oxidized low-density lipoprotein is associated with atherosclerosis. That's a whole different story. I don't want to get into it. But the ironic part of all this is that lean meat, and like I said, the lean meat that I used to eat, like sirloin and ground round, that kind of stuff, it doesn't have that much saturated fat. It only has a little bit more fish doesn't have hardly any saturated fat at all. Lean meat doesn't have much saturated fat, and the type of fatty acid that's dominant in red meat is called stearic acid. It's also found in chocolate. It doesn't affect your blood lipids at all. It doesn't raise your cholesterol, doesn't raise your triglycerides. So this whole nonsense about eating red meat, in relation to cardiovascular disease, is just that. It's nonsense. However, I would really, if you're interested in health, you want to avoid the high-fat processed meats such as bacon, sausage, and ham. I know people love bacon and all that kind of stuff, but those type of, let's say, refined meats, processed meats, they have been implicated in promoting colon and stomach cancers. So those you want to keep away from. You probably want to really focus on leaner, on other types of meat like turkey and chicken. But, red meat isn't bad. But before I end this discussion of red meat, I wanted to talk about a recent study that was very alarming. It came out just recently in 2023. It was a study out of Harvard. And this study claimed that eating just 2 servings of meat per week greatly increased the risk of developing type 2 diabetes later in life. And the more meat you eat, in other words, if you ate meat every day like the carnivore people do, you had a much greater chance of developing type 2 diabetes. Now, the first thing to note about this study, first of all, 462 million people in the world have type 2 diabetes, and the rate of diabetes is rapidly increasing. My opinion is the reason that type 2 diabetes rates are increasing has nothing whatsoever to do with eating red meat. I think it's related to a lack of physical activity and increased body fat that results from not exercising, and also eating refined carbohydrates and sugars such as fructose, excess fructose. And I believe the increased rate of type 2 diabetes has nothing whatsoever to do with eating red meat. Anyway, in this study, it was called the Nurses' Health Study. This is an epidemiological study. Now, what that means is a study that studies large numbers of people. In this case, it was 216,695 people. They were recruited between the years 1976 to 1989, and the participants, most of them were white people, age 46 at the beginning. There were 36 when it began, and 53 when the study was initiated. By the end of the follow-up period of these studies, nearly 22,800 people developed type 2 diabetes, and those who ate the most total meat had a 62% higher risk of developing diabetes compared to people who ate the least. Eating the most processed or unprocessed meat was linked with a 51 and 40% higher risk of diabetes, respectively. Now, the thing is, they don't really, again, this is an epidemiological study. That means it's hard, it shows no cause and effect. In other words, they cannot show a direct relationship between eating red meat and diabetes onset. They only look at a bunch of people, and because 22,000 people out of, 176, I believe, out of 260,000, 22,000 developed type 2 diabetes. So based on that, they come up with this idea that eating red meat twice a week or more would increase your risk of diabetes. They also said that swapping a meat serving for having nuts or legumes instead of eating meat led to a 30% reduction for developing type 2 diabetes. And again, this study does not prove in any way that eating red meat causes diabetes. I think it's a bunch of bullshit myself. But why? How could red meat possibly cause or diabetes or promote diabetes? One possible reason is the saturated fat content. Now, as I pointed out, red meat, if you get the leaner cuts, it's not that high in saturated fat to begin with. However, huge amounts of saturated fat, if for some reason you're eating, let's say, fatty cuts of meat and consuming a lot of saturated fat from not just meat but other foods, it can reduce insulin sensitivity, and it also a high dose of saturated fat can injure the beta cells in the pancreas, which produce insulin. The heme iron that's found in red meat, which I pointed out earlier, is an advantage of red meat. If you take in too much heme iron, it can increase insulin resistance and impair the beta cell functioning and cause oxidative stress, which damages the production, the cells in the pancreas which produce insulin. Now, another possible reason that they give, which I think is probably the silliest of all, is meat contains an amino acid called glycine, which because of that, they somehow associate glycine with increased diabetes risk. In point of fact, another recent study showed that a combination of the same amino acid glycine and another nutrient called N-acetylcysteine, these are the precursors for a major antioxidant in the body called glutathione. Having an efficient glutathione system or glutathione production extends life and prevents disease. The notion that glycine is associated with diabetes is laughable nonsense. That probably stems from animal studies. Now, another reason they give why red meat could cause diabetes is excess body fat, and they say that because red meat is higher in calories, if you eat it too much of it, you'll get fat. Now, the problem is again that if you eat the leaner cuts of meat, again, like ground round or sirloin, you're not getting a lot of saturated fat. You're not getting a lot of calories. As a matter of fact, I had to increase my meat intake when I followed the meat and egg diet because I was losing weight too fast, and I certainly wasn't gaining fat. I was losing it like crazy. So this study about red meat causing diabetes, to me, is it's not red meat. It's a red herring. Herring, by the way, is a good source of omega-3 and also one of the best natural sources of creatine. I had to throw that in, sorry. But seriously, whether you choose to eat red meat or not is a personal choice. As I said earlier, if you decide not to eat red meat because of ethical reasons, because of your love for animals, that's the main reason why I chose not to eat red meat, because I know this is going to sound strange, but I love cows. Not to have a personal relationship with. I'm not going to date a cow. But what I'm saying is cows are gentle, very sweet animals. If you ever go on a farm and you're around them, you'll know what I'm talking about. And they're very close to their calves, their babies, and the thought of eating them just literally turns my stomach. Of course, there's that diverticulitis factor, but that's the association between red meat and diverticulitis is very minor. So that's not the main reason I cut out red meat. I cut out red meat because I don't like eating cows. Simply as that. But that's an ethical reason. But as far as I noted in this video, if you're cutting out meat because of health concerns, most of them are just plain, to put it colloquially, bullshit. They're just not. Just don't hold up when you look at the evidence. Of course, as the old saying, only the dose determines the poison. If you eat too much of anything, that's not good. Now, in the case of red meat, if you were to eat, let's say, 8 pounds a day, you would probably be taking in far too much heme iron. It would have a greater chance of oxidation. That could cause health problems. But there's nothing wrong with moderate amounts of meat. When I was on the meat and egg diet, the most meat I ate was about 2 pounds a day. There was a very famous bodybuilder years ago who lived in France. He used to come to the United States. You could look at photos of him on Google. He passed away a couple of years ago. His name was Serge Nubret. This guy had a tremendous physique. In fact, when he stood relaxed, he looked unbeatable. In fact, Arnold Schwarzenegger himself once told me that standing relaxed, Serge Nubret could defeat any other bodybuilder in the world, including himself. However, when Serge Nubret raised his arms, like in a double bicep pose or something like that, he didn't quite look as impressive, which is why he lost the contest. But my point about Serge Nubret in relation to this video is that Serge Nubret claimed to eat 9 pounds of horse meat a day. I repeat, 9 pounds of horse meat a day. Now, horse meat's always been popular in France and European countries. Not so popular here in the United States. But horse meat, by the way, just in case you're wondering, is a leaner type of meat. It's kind of akin to the type of meats I was eating, which is the ground round and sirloin. It's a leaner type of meat, and eating horse meat is not, as far as fat content, is not that much different than eating fish, which explains how Nubret could appear as muscular as he was. I personally don't believe that he was eating 9 pounds of horse meat a day, but that's another story. But just threw that in. And again, sum it up, reiterate, I think meat is fine in moderation. If you don't want to eat it for ethical reasons, don't eat it. But don't believe all this nonsense, these various videos, especially by vegan advocates, who always warn about how bad red meat is. That's a bunch of crap. I mean, again, if you eat moderate amounts of red meat, it's only going to be good for you, especially if you stick to the leaner cuts, like ground round, sirloin, that type of thing. So that's about it for red meat. I will eventually. There's other aspects of red meat that are too extensive to cover in this video. I don't believe in making 4-hour videos or podcasts like some other people do. To me, that's mental torture. I would never in a billion years, make that a trillion years, listen to a video that goes on for 4.5 hours. No freaking way. But anyway, that's just me. But anyway, so in the future article in Applied Metabolics, I will discuss other aspects of red meat that I couldn't get into in this video that are very interesting. By the way, if you want more information about nutrition, exercise science, anti-aging research, ergogenic aids, hormone therapy, supplement science, which supplements work and which ones don't, women's health and fitness. I cover more topics in Applied Metabolics than any other digital publication on the internet. It's 30 to 50 pages every month. No ads. I don't push any products at all. You notice, by the way, I don't put, those of you who are subscribers to my YouTube channel, which you're looking at now, and if you're not, I suggest you do subscribe. It's free. You'll get a notice that a new video is posted every Tuesday. You might notice I don't push any products in my videos. There's nothing fancy about my videos. I got this black background, no graphics, nothing except the feature of my videos is there's no BS, there's no pushing up products. It's 100% truth based on my knowledge and experience. And you find that also in my Applied Metabolics. Again, it's based on over 60 years of constant study and practical experience, which cannot be matched to my knowledge by anyone else who's publishing a digital publication. So subscribe today at www.appliedmetabolics.com. When you subscribe, send me an email, and I'll send you an invitation to join my private Applied Metabolics Facebook page, where each day I post new information on exercise, nutrition, and general medicine. I have an email portal on my Applied Metabolics webpage where current subscribers only can send me short questions about anything they read in Applied Metabolics or anything that comes to mind related to nutrition and exercise. I do not respond to unsolicited questions. However, you're welcome to leave comments under my videos about maybe possibly suggestions for future videos. So I'll end this by saying, if you want to have the best friend you'll ever have, go to your local shelter, adopt a dog. Thank you for listening to this kind of long video, but hopefully you'll gain some benefit from it. Take care.